What's up, everyone? Welcome to Chicks and Salsa. I am Megan Price, and we got Carrie Johnson right next to me. How is your week going, Carrie?
It's going really well. Mother Nature played with everyone last night. Round of storms that sent from Texas and it went on up through Missouri and
Right, yeah. We
Lord
had
only knows
storms.
where else it went.
Yeah, we had baseball games, rain delays, all kinds of stuff going on yesterday. So,
Well,
alrighty. So, go ahead.
definitely a less sleep type at night was what happened yesterday.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, yeah, if y'all are having extreme weather or extreme thunderstorms, you guys be careful out there. Make sure you're keeping an eye on and have either local radio or local TV stations on for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely.
With satellite and internet and every streaming services, like sometimes that's not what you need. You need the old school radio for them to tell you.
For
know.
real. I didn't even think about that until just the other day when I was driving along. I'm like, the sky looks a little ominous. Maybe I should put on regular radio and see what's going on.
Right, yes. Alrighty, so well, not only is it the time of year for thunderstorms, but it is the time of year for March Madness. And even though we're in April, we're getting towards the end of it now. We have all of our Final Four teams, but let's start with the Elite Eight. We had two Elite Eight games last night. We had Iowa versus LSU, and this was a championship rematch from the year before. No love loss whatsoever between these two teams.
No.
For me, I felt like LSU. Okay, so when they first came out, LSU looked stale. They looked stunned. Iowa was hitting threes, like what they do. And I think that I need to go ahead and shout out the rest of Iowa's team besides CC because they stepped up in a big way, not only in this game but in throughout the entire tournament. Something that I didn't see
Absolutely.
all season long. It was more just off of Caitlin. And when Caitlin was having a rough shooting night, it looked like Iowa looked lost. The rest of their offense looked lost. And that was not the case pretty much any game in this tournament, I'll have to say. They
No.
stepped up in a way that I was incredibly surprised. I thought that this was a team that just kind of moved and went as CC, and that they were a more complete team last year. And they proved me wrong. I was absolutely wrong. This is a team that works as a team. And even when we break it down to coaching, I felt like Kim Mulkey got out coached last night. I'm not sure why she didn't have her best defender on Caitlin Clark. I will say this after the game. In her press conference, she said, there is no guarding Caitlin Clark. She said, we didn't guard her last year. And so I had to say, I don't respect much that Kim Mulkey has to say, but I respected her for keeping it real because there is really no containing Caitlin Clark at that point in time. And I don't know if there is at all going forward. Now, we shall see. They will match up against UConn. UConn ended up beating USC last night, 82-73. Juju had 29, 2 and 10. Mackenzie Forbes had 24, 3 and 3. And Rhea Marshall had 11, 2 and 11. On the UConn side of things, Paige had 28, 6 and 10. Aaliyah Edwards had 24, 1 and 6. And then Nika Mule had 8, 8 and 5. And then she also had 2 steals and 1 block. I would say that this game was a much more technical game. I felt like it was very close, back and forth. The only difference was in the second half, in quarter 3 and 4, UConn scored maybe 2 more buckets here and maybe a bucket more in the fourth quarter, and that's how it went. It was just a few possessions, a couple of layups that were missed, contested shots, and they just ended up winning the game. Like, I felt like USC was absolutely in this game until the very last of it. It was not the game before that where LSU looked like they were lost part of it. Then Angel comes back after that first possession in the Iowa game. They call a timeout and they go over, and you can hear the Angel tell the girls, stop taking dumb shots. You could see her mouth it. Stop taking dumb shots. And they got it together. And, Angel really started to shine. She had several blocks. Her defense was really good. And the thing about playing really good defense when your offense isn't hitting because their shots were just not going in. It's reactionary. It's not preventative. And so they were just not, all they could do was kind of react to what Iowa was doing. And they did well for the first half of that. But then going into the second half, or right before halftime, Angel goes up to block a shot. She blocks the shot, but then she stumbles as she's kind of falls out of bounds, falls behind the basket, and she re-injures her ankle that she hurt in the first game of the tournament. When she hurt her ankle in the first game of the tournament, they were up by 35 points. It was like the last couple minutes of the game. There was no reason she should have been in the game. And so this brings it back to Kim got outcoached. Angel probably wouldn't have had that injury or tweaked that injury,
Right.
you know, at this point in the game, had she been paying attention to having, you know, she runs her, that's how she runs her players. You know, they play all 40 minutes. They don't take a lot of time out. So, you know, had she not been coaching that way, which to me is a very reactionary way to coach, very different than having a system in place. And then, like I said, they didn't have their best defender. The best perimeter defender they have is Flage, and they didn't have her on Caitlin Clark. But like Kim said, how much can you really guard her? I think you can contain her a little bit, but she is what she is.
Well, and you see that across anything, any sport. If they are that kind of generational type talent, all you can hope for is to minimize what they can do as opposed to shut them down. We've talked about this across all the different sports that we've talked about. You know, there's only so much you can do to contain generational talent, no matter what sport it is.
Right. You know, I feel like your type of game plan that you have to have when you go into that is shutting everybody else down and let that person go off, because Caitlin could have had 60. She wouldn't have won the ball game if nobody else would have scored, or if you keep them minimalized. And this is where her supporting cast really stepped up. And so it was not possibly the way I expected it to go. I kind of felt like Iowa might get their lick back. There's Candy. Hey, Candy.
Hi, there's our friend.
Hopefully, I know we've been having some
Hi.
There we go. We've been having some technical issues. Alrighty. So glad that you're able to be on. We are talking about the games. Yeah, we're talking about the games last night. So we were talking about LSU and Iowa, and just that there's really no way to contain Caitlin Clark at this point in time, and kind of talking about what Kim had to say after the game. That was her comment. She said, we didn't even guard her in the national championship last year. She went off last year. It just wasn't enough to win the game. I think that this goes back more to, it was not the blockbuster year that Haley Van Lith thought it was going to be, that we all thought it was going to be with Haley Van Lith there at LSU. And I hate that for her. But I also had a feeling that could happen because I didn't see her mixing well with LSU. Like, I think the way that she plays, she's more about a system, and LSU doesn't really play a system. They play freely. That's how they move. And I think she probably would have fit in somewhere well where they had a system. She probably could have gone to Maryland and done pretty well at Maryland. I know she could have gone to Stanford and done well at Stanford. If it were me, that's what I would have done. I probably would have headed over to Stanford because we don't know if HVL's, no, she has to go this year, right? I think she's a 5th-year senior, so I think she has to go into the draft. We know that Camila Cardoso she declared yesterday. So she will also be going into the draft. That's the center from South Carolina, the 6'7" Brazilian young lady. Very stacked draft. And so we'll have, go ahead.
Because help this blonde out a little bit. What isn't there like only 32 spots or something ridiculously low in the women's draft?
It's 36 because there's 3 rounds and there's 12 teams. Okay. And so next year we will have 13 teams positive. Golden State area, the Bay will have a team as well. And so, that opens up the league a little bit. We have 144 roster spots, and then next year we'll have 156 roster spots. And you think about that, there's not 36 roster spots for those draftees to come in. Not everybody makes the team. Just because you get drafted doesn't mean, oh, you got a spot on the team. No, you got a spot in training camp. That's what you got, and it's tough to find a spot on these rosters that are on these teams. There's a lot of teams that may only have one, maybe two positions open, and that's the most. There's teams like Vegas who really don't have a whole lot of roster spots open. Teams like New York, there's not a whole lot of space there. So I do think that this tournament, because we have the championship on a Monday and then the Sunday, and then the following Monday after that is the draft. And so this is your audition for the league. And then like 2 weeks later, you're at training camp after that. So it's a very quick turnaround of going into the league. Very excited for this season. Now the UConn USC game, I really thought having 6 to 7 players was going to catch up to UConn, because that's all they've had this tournament. They've been running with 6 girls. Last night they had 7 girls, and I just thought eventually it's going to catch up to them. USC is a little bit more of a complete team as far as the amount of people that they have there. Well, it turns out, they're conditioned to run with only 6 or 7 girls, and they didn't need the rest of them. That experience that they have, and then that experience that they have at the coaching position, really started to show in that second half, but not a lot. Like, they didn't look leaps and bounds better than USC. They were just enough to get by USC is kind of how I viewed it. Now, the night before that, or day before that, on Sunday, when Texas had to play NC State, that was tough. Y'all know I'm a Texas fan till the day I die. And I knew getting NC State was going to be tough because they play the exact same defense that we play. Like, literally full court press. They play that exact same man on man, full court press, that type of defense. They disrupt your shooting all the time. And so that's exactly what they did to us. And I knew that was going to be a chance. And the difference maker with NC State and Texas is their guard play. They have 2 outstanding guards there at NC State, and congratulations to them to moving on. This is the first time that they've made the Final Four in 26 years. And for the guys, I want to say almost 40 years since they've made it this far. So congratulations to them as a whole. But I knew it was going to be tough. And I have to say, if we would have had our point guard, Rory Harmon, it might have been a different ballgame. But coulda, shoulda, woulda, injuries happen. And NC State was definitely the better team by a lot that day, because even though on the score the differential was 10 points, they were up 15-17 on us the entire game. Like, they just dominated us. And so when they disrupted our defense or disrupted our shooting with their defense, they turned around on the other side of the court, and their guard play was just ridiculous. So congratulations to them. South Carolina got past Oregon State in the Elite Eight, and I don't think anybody was incredibly surprised by that. Oregon State really, really needs to figure out why they let their coach go before the tournament, because y'all made it to the Elite Eight without a coach.
That's wild.
They had an early exit in their conference tournament, and that's tough. But you're in the Pac-12. That's one of the toughest women's basketball conferences out there. Day in and day out. It's tough conference play over there in the Pac-12. And it's the last year of the Pac-12 anyway. So it was just strange to me that they let her go, knowing that they were going to be a 3 seed. And not only were they a 3 seed, they made it to the Elite Eight. And they didn't have their coach. It was not smart, in my opinion.
Interesting timing for certain.
Right.
What were they thinking? But whatever.
There's been interesting timing is the right phrase for that, because we've seen some moves. Like Tennessee got knocked out of the tournament, and the very next day they let their coach go. There was Kenny Brooks with Virginia Tech. Less than 24 hours, he had already committed to Kentucky. So, there's interesting timing is the nice way to put it, I think. But obviously there were deals and talks in place before this happened. If you can say, hey, I'm going to coach in Kentucky, and it's been less than 12 hours that I lost with Virginia Tech.
Dusty May went really quickly to Michigan.
Right, very true, very true.
Mhm.
So, now on the guys side of things, we got NC State is in it as well. UConn guys are in it as well. They will be playing each other, and then it'll be Alabama and Purdue. And Purdue is definitely looking like not looking like the team from last year. They're not shaky. I don't know. I think they can get past Alabama. I'm like 80% sure, 85% sure they can get past Alabama. But I think anybody, whether it's Alabama or Purdue, they got a train coming for them, and that's UConn. They look far and above everybody else. The same way on the women's side of things, South Carolina just looks like almost a whole nother level ahead of everybody else. South Carolina is a team that plays crazy good defense, and then they follow it up with a very fast, fantastic offense, and that's UConn too on the guys' side of things. So I don't know. I don't know if it's anybody what their chances are really like against either one of those teams. But what are your ladies' thoughts on our Final Four teams?
I think that we've got some really good representation. I think that the world was introduced to what women's basketball is becoming last night. I think that the women's play has really kind of outshone the men in several regards. Far more entertaining. My 2 cents.
Okay. I mean, and that has been said a lot. I mean, we've heard it a lot, I feel like. So
yeah.
UConn versus Alabama. That's right. My bad. UConn versus Alabama. That's my bad. And then NC State versus Purdue. I think Purdue gets past NC State, and obviously UConn gets past Alabama. My bad. Thank you for correcting me.
Do you think that it's because the talent now is a little bit more evenly spread across the men's?
Even in the women's too. I mean, I know we're still talking about the perennial programs there. NC State is, while they haven't been to the Final Four in 26 years, obviously, I think that they've been relevant in the Elite Eight and the Sweet 16 for 10, 15 years. Like, we know that they go through the season. They quietly win all season long. They've been doing that. So I don't think NC State was a surprise on the women's side of things. Obviously a surprise on the guys side of things because they're an 11 seed. Nobody expected that, y'all. And if you said that you did, then I don't believe it. I'm sorry. Now, if you said when you started seeing them play in their conference tournament and you were like, oh, okay, maybe we got a chance to win it all. Okay, then maybe I believe that. But as far as like in the regular season and you're saying, oh, we can win it. No, you didn't. You didn't think that.
I think some of the teams that are out that were expected to do well, we've seen a fall off. Like, like the Marquette NC game,
right?
Marquette did not shoot well at all. Now, kudos to NC State because part of that is always defense. But I think you have to be hot at the right time as well. And I think some of these teams that were expected to do well, we're finding that they're not. Like, they're shooting.
Go ahead and say UNC, Candy. Say UNC. No, that's who we're talking about. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Marquette too.
Marquette was awful. Like when you're looking at 26 or 36% from the field, like that. And I want to say they weren't even 50% from the free throw line. I'm like those things you can't miss. Like I get the 3-pointers, like you're way far away. They're defending like that. You're not always going to have a best shots, but going inside, you should be doing a lot more and you're rebounding. I give NC State a lot of credit because they've been doing a lot of that lately.
There's a lot of validity in that statement that the timing, your peakness should not be in the middle of the season, but when it matters the most.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. I talk about this all the time. 3 championships ago, because Vegas went back to back, but the championship before that was with the Chicago Sky when Candace Parker left LA to go to Chicago, and they won a championship that first year. Well, when they won that championship, they were a 500 team, y'all, going into the playoffs. They had been injured for a good portion of the season and struggled, and so when they went into the playoffs, they were a 500 team. And so that exactly, people coming off injury, you getting hot at the exact right time is really all that matters. If you go in as an 11 seed, you still got a chance. And,
Yep.
you know, that's what we love about March Madness. We do see a few more upsets, I think, on the guys' side of things. And we will see some more parity, I believe, on the women's side of things. I expect the SEC to be crazy next year. You know, there are talks now that Kara Lawson might go over to Tennessee. She's the coach there at Duke who made the Elite Eight. You know, they made a really incredible run. They were not enough. And but they went much further than people expected them to. And to me, that says great coaching, and that is Kara Lawson. She has said the only reason that she would leave Duke is if she could go play at her alma mater. And that job is now open. When Tennessee let their coach go, you know, Kara Lawson is a Pat Summitt product. And I mean, it just seems almost storybook if she goes over there. So then you got Texas and OU joining the SEC. You got LSU still going to be Valley. Kim Mulkey is still, you know, Kim Mulkey is still Kim Mulkey. And then, of course, you got South Carolina. And then, you know, you got Vanderbilt does a few things. You got Ole Miss in there, too. So I expect the SEC to be a really strong women's basketball conference next year. I know that the conference realignment was about football and money. That's what it was about. But the products that we're going to see because of that, the changes that we're going to see, it's very exciting to me. Some people don't like the changes that we've had with the portal. I've heard a lot of coaches talking about, because the portal opens while the tournament is going on. And I personally think they should do it after.
Mm-hmm.
Let these
We
teams.
talked about that even with the football.
Right. Right. I think they should do the portal once the season is all the way over for everybody else. And I feel like that's in any sport. That seems like the right thing to do. But I want to shout out Coach Staley because she is not that coach that sits there in press conferences and complains about the portal and the problems with recruiting and nil deals. Like that's not her. She's not going to sit there and get up and say like, oh, well, how do you coach these players? No, she figures it out. She goes with the changes of it because it's the right thing. And she shows adoration for her players instead of talking about they're uncoachable because they're getting paid. And that is a shot at Gino because that's literally what he said in the press conference. And you can be successful and still move with these changes because it has changed. It's already done. It's already happened. You just have to learn how to deal with it.
You can either sit and bemoan and want to live in the past, or you can move and transform and be successful with the new regime, the new way that things are being done. And that's where you're going to find the division of these coaches even is, are they willing to morph into what is today's coaching as opposed to what was 10 years ago?
Right. Well, if your program is solid enough, if your program speaks for itself, it doesn't matter when the portal opens.
Right.
Dawn is always going to have her crew. Like she's going to have some that she pulls from the portal. She's going to have people that commit that are coming out of high school. Like she's still going to do her recruiting regardless. And she's still like, she's right back in the same position that she was last year. And she has a brand new team, y'all. She makes it work. And she doesn't get up there and complain about it. Instead, she talks about, in this most recent press conference that she has, she talked about how this group is so different than any other group that she's ever had, that she had to like take a step back. And because they operate so freely, like the way that they play the game, they have so much fun, they're out there having a good time, that they don't need a whole lot of coaching is what she said. And that she just kind of took a step back and let them do their thing. And she said that that was something that's vastly different than what she's used to, but she had to allow it to happen because that's how they play at their best. And I don't know if you see another coach who, lets their ego go like that. So, I mean, just an amazing person and coach that she is.
I think. Go ahead, Candy.
What I was going to say is that I think the transfer portal and NIL, we all think it affects all the players, and it does. But I think what it does is it really affects the coaches, because I think the coaches now have to learn how to coach to the strengths of the players that they have on the team and their person is to really be able to inflict your style. Like, okay, we're going to be slow. We're going to do this methodical and do well, maybe not. because maybe that's not the strength of your place, and you won't have success.
Right. It's not, I think it takes the balance and gives some of the power back to the athletes. And that's what needed to happen. It needed to happen because they had no power. All they were doing was trying to get a position to go pro. That's the only benefit that they were getting.
And not to diminish it, but that's really what a good leader, supervisor, manager, coach does, is you aren't always in control of who you get to be in your core. You don't get to handpick everything about who you're managing, who you're working with. None of this. Doesn't matter what the situation is. But if you play to the strengths of that group of people, as opposed to try to impose your willpower, you're going to get a better result no matter what the situation is.
Right.
So,
I was just talking about this in a different work environment, but the differences between bosses, and that's kind of what your coach is, kind of your boss. Instead of having people that work for you, they work with you. And I think that makes a huge difference, and I think Dawn is somebody like that. Whereas, you look at a lot of other programs and those athletes play for them, not with them. And one of my favorite things about my coach when I was in high school and junior high, he was a guy that he would tell you what he wanted, but then he would get out and he would show you the drill exactly the way he wanted it. And when we would go run cross country, he would run with us. So you couldn't sit there and be like, oh, coach needs to get out here and run. Well, he was, so that is, I think that's a very important thing in a supervisor or just that type of situation. Yeah, I think that's very important.
I'm kind of tooting my son's horn, is that's how he manages his, he's a manager at 20 years old. He takes his first manager role at 20, but he doesn't do anything. He doesn't ask people to do something for him that he isn't doing himself.
Wouldn't do himself. Yeah, I love and respect that a lot, and I think that's that's the difference that we see in a lot of these programs that stand out like that. We talked a lot about Jackson State and Tamika over there. Like what she's done at that position, and I think she's just one of those type of people that those players play with her and not for her. They don't feel that way, and especially when they're making that decision to go to a HBCU instead of going somewhere else, like that's in a Power 5 conference, they're already making that sacrifice to go there. And then she makes it known like, hey, I'm with you, we're together. And I think that's very, very important.
I think that's how you can tell that even, again, across the board in any sport, I think that's what separates the coaches from the good to the greats, the goats, the ones that are making legacy out there are the ones that are, do as I say, not as I do, or are you walking the walk?
Right.
And
right.
I'll move a mountain for someone that's walking the walk.
And before we head out of here, just one little blip it. Did you ladies get a chance to read the Washington Post article about Kim Mulkey?
I have not.
I'll say this, because this is the one where she threatened to get her lawyers involved, and I'm sure they were involved. To me, it felt like either after the lawyers got involved, they deleted some of it, they watered it down, or maybe they were trying to educate new fans, because otherwise there was no new information that came out in it. They were talking just some of her disapproval of lifestyle choices and even some of the racially charged stuff that she says. And I don't know, I'm a Big 12 fan. UT's been in the Big 12 forever. I knew who Kim Mulkey was. None of it was new information. So I just felt like it was watered down or it was meant for new fans. And I know there's a ton of new fans, so maybe that's what it was meant for. But it was no new information whatsoever.
It was not earth-shattering news for you.
No. I read about 10 minutes of it, and I was like, I don't even think I'm going to finish this because I know all this. So
right.
Kim is not a great person. She's a good coach.
She is results-driven coach.
True. Yeah, very true. Very true. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to do it for us tonight. We appreciate everybody commenting and watching. We got tons of people watching tonight. We appreciate that. And we will be back next week. We will be talking the results of March Madness and then probably prepping for the WNBA draft because things have changed. Cameron Brink was looking like the solid number 2 pick going into this. They had an early exit. So is that number 2 pick up for grabs? We don't know. We shall see very, very soon.
Ought to be very interesting.
Yes. All right, guys. Well, we will see you back next week. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for watching. We appreciate y'all.